So let's get straight into it. In this lesson, you will learn the letters of the Greek alphabet, capital and lowercase. You will learn about vowel quantity and diphthongs. You will learn about the basics of organization of consonants in the Greek language. You'll learn even more complex stuff about the alphabet. You will also learn non-classical pronunciation, like what you would find in a Greek church. Lastly, plenty of fun facts you can bring up at a party. So the standard ancient Greek alphabet has 24 letters, and, well, Homer's Iliad, Homer's Odyssey, 24 books, each one gets a letter. Before we get into it, there are a couple of things I want to mention. First, definitely I would recommend getting a Greek keyboard on your computer. It doesn't take too long to figure out how it works, but specifically I'd recommend getting a polytonic keyboard, not a modern one, because there will be a bunch of extra stuff you want to be able to do for the ancient Greek language. Secondly, for a lot of my slides I use a Calibri font because I think it's pretty, but for this slide I'm going to use the Georgia font because it shows squiggles a lot better. Our first letter is alpha. Second is beta, and that's where we get alphabet, alpha, beta. Gamma, delta, epsilon, zeta, eta, theta, iota. There's the saying, does it make one iota of difference? Well, I'll let you look that up for yourself, why that matters. There's kappa, lambda, mu, nu, xi, omicron, pi, rho, sigma, and here, notice how there are three forms. The first one is a capital letter used anywhere. The second one is an initial or medial form. You would write this lowercase sigma at the beginning of forms or in the middle of forms. This last one is a final form. It's the sigma that you'll use at the very end of a word. Sometimes people use sigmas that always look like C's, like the letter C. That's called the lunate sigma. It looks like a moon, the luna. Oxford Classical Texts, I think, uses that, and I find it to be really ugly. There's tau, upsilon, phi, chi, psi, and lastly, omega. And I hope with mentioning all these different letters by name, I don't get a warning on my account for certain current events. But yeah. So let's go over all the letters individually. Here we have alpha, and you can see the name alpha written in Greek. Don't worry too much about these weird things above letters right now. You'll figure out those pretty quickly. This alpha makes the ah sound, and it can be either short, like in the word hat, or it can be a long ah, like in father. Next we have beta, and it makes the normal B sound. Some of you might now be thinking I don't know what I'm talking about, because, well, this is actually vita. Well, there are different pronunciations of Greek, and, well, this is the classical pronunciation. We will go over a different pronunciation system a bit later, though. Next we have gamma, and it's never a soft G. So as far as the ancient Greeks are concerned, it's GIF, it's not GIF. So you sent someone a GIF, a funny GIF. But there's another pronunciation that sometimes sounds like an N when a gamma is followed by another palatal, whether it's another gamma or perhaps it's a kappa or a xi or a ki. In that case, it makes the N sound, and you will see examples of that soon enough. Delta is here, and it makes a D sound. This is epsilon, and, well, epsilon's kind of an interesting name. First you have the e, and then you have the adjective, which means plain or by itself, bare, ordinary, whatever. It's just the straight up e sound, epsilon. And so, unlike the alpha, which can be long or short, this is always short. So it's just the eh sound, like in bet. This is zeta, and I'm just going to say makes the Z sound. A lot of different classicists will say, oh, it's a delta sigma sound or a DS sound, or it's actually a sigma delta sound. Just make the Z sound and we'll leave it there. So you remember how I said epsilon's always short? Well, there's a separate letter for the long version, and that's eta. This is always the long A sound. So epsilon, bet. But this is A. Always a very long sound. Now, there's that difference in quantity, the length. But some people suggest there's also a qualitative difference in the sound. It goes from just a long eh to maybe even sounding a bit different, sounding like a. Most classicists, when they're reading an eta, they do tend, in the English-speaking world, to qualitatively pronounce it differently as well as quantitatively from the epsilon. So this is theta, a th sound like in thin, a voiceless dental fricative, if you want to be specific about it. Though it probably wasn't that originally. It was probably an aspirated dental sound, a T followed by a puff of air, t. There's a normal T or D sound with a really breathy aftertaste or something. But between the letters T, as in toy, and D as in dog, adding another one of those sounds, just slightly breathier, is maybe confusing to people with English ears. And later, the theta did actually get to be pronounced not as an aspirate, but as a fricative. So people, a sizable portion of classicists will read this as a th sound like in the word thin. E or I. This is another letter that can be long or short, and when you make a long E sound, it's very often qualitatively different as well as quantitatively different from the very, very short I. So iota, either long E or short I for the sounds. This is kappa, always the hard C in cat or a K in kangaroo. Not soft or whatever, it's a K sound. Lambda, it makes the L sound like in like and subscribe. So if you haven't liked this video, smash that like button and destroy the subscribe button, turn on notifications, share this video, and make sure, well, if you do that, I can guarantee you'll remember everything in all my lessons forever. And this is mu, mu. Normal M sound, like in my channel. That is my channel, the channel you should subscribe to. This is new. You can see how the lowercase is kind of like the uppercase, just missing the leftmost part. Plain N sound, like in the English word notifications, and just remember, new for notifications, notifications from Shrub of Knowledge, so that you never miss a video. So Omicron, and now that you're looking at the Greek spelling of the name, you might be able to figure that this is another vowel, which is always short. The micron is a very short unit of length measurement, and this is the short sound, like in, well, stop. Here's pi, or p, the normal p as in please. Please smash that like button, and you know what? Please leave a comment on this video too. Leave a comment. Hey, did you know pi before? Do you think there's someone who hasn't encountered this letter in math? What's your favorite letter of the Greek alphabet? What's something that you have learned from this video? Blah, blah, blah. Yep. So here's rho, and it's not really like the English R sound. It's sort of trilled, all fancy-like, or rolled a little bit, like Spanish or something, but it's not like the English R sound. Try to be able to roll your R's if you can. I know there are some people who can't. Some people have anatomies where they're physically incapable of doing that. If you're one of those people, my sympathies, but, well, I've never actually had a conversation with anyone in ancient Greek, so it's not made any difference that I can actually make my R's trilled as far as Greek's concerned. So yeah. Here's sigma. We already kind of mentioned these things. There's a different medial or initial form, and there's sometimes the lunate sigma, which basically just looks like a C. You know, if I'm grading your homework and I see that lunate sigma, I will not be a very happy person. I will not be happy. This is tau, looks like a T, makes the T sound, pretty easy. You know what? I want to go back to this. I just really don't like the lunate sigma. If you can make some memes about why the lunate sigma is annoying and ugly, please put them on the Facebook page. Send them to the Facebook page. Send them to the Instagram. I'd like to see some memes. We don't like the lunate sigma here. Don't do it. Here's upsilon. There's that word psilos again. It's the plain U sound, but kind of like the French U, a bit more posh or something. But if you just make the short sound, like in, as you would write the words or the letters UH, most people aren't really going to care. So here we have phi or phi, and we have a similar situation to what we had with theta. Originally it was an aspirated consonant. It was a consonant followed by a big puff of air. So originally it would have been something like p, really breathy and sort of an explosion of air outside the mouth. But later we get what we have from, well, English words that originally come from Greek words. The PH sounds like an F, so most people will read f as opposed to p. This is ki. It's another one of these aspirated or breathy consonants. You can pronounce it like a K, but try to put in the extra effort to make it more like a KH sound. A Greek word that starts with a key is Christos for Christ. That's why Christ is spelled Chrisist, because that first letter is a key. Just definitely don't pronounce it like an English CH in other circumstances where it makes a ch sound. It's never ch, it's k. This is psi or psi, and it makes a ps sound like in the word psychology. Last but not least, we have omega, and you can see from the way the name of the letter is written, this is the big or the mega O as opposed to the omicron. And so this is pronounced like a long O sound, the O in dome. And not only is there that quantitative difference, the very short versus the O, but there is also that qualitative difference. Has a different kind of sound than O, and that's pretty common to hear. So we've talked about how to pronounce vowels by themselves, but there are certain combinations of vowels known as diphthongs, diphthongoi, literally two sounds, which make something new. So we have what are called proper and improper diphthongs, and there are 8 proper diphthongs: alpha iota, alpha upsilon, epsilon iota, epsilon upsilon, eta upsilon, omicron iota, omicron upsilon, and upsilon iota. There are also some improper diphthongs. These are alpha with a iota right beneath it, an iota subscript is what it's called, an eta with an iota, and an omega with an iota. And we'll see how these things are improper. Once again, I want to say that with church pronunciation, a lot of these are different, so I'm going to give you the classical pronunciation here. The alpha iota, just try to pronounce them right next to each other. A-I, and do it more quickly. I, I. It kind of sounds like the I in aisle, or just the word for eyeball. So alpha iota right next to each other. I. Next we have alpha upsilon, and you can do the same thing. Pronounce the alpha and then the upsilon and see what happens. A-U. And then do it more quickly. Ow. Kind of like the ow in ouch. An A-W sound, sort of. Let's do the same thing with epsilon iota. A. A. Kind of like the A in the word 8. So, in English words that start with the letters E-U, we often say you, like in the word Eucharist. But let's try to pronounce the epsilon and the upsilon separately first. E-U. Well, it's kind of a reversal if you want to say it sounds like you. Originally, this would have been eu. Eu. So, for Attic Greek, let's just keep it eu. And if you remember, the eta is the longer version of the epsilon, and so this diphthong, the eta upsilon, you can imagine sounds quite similar to epsilon upsilon. Eu. Maybe just exaggerate that first half of the diphthong a bit more for eu. Same old, same old. A-I for omicron iota. Say it quickly. I. Kind of sounds like the oi in oil. Oi. Now this is the one for me, which was kind of the trickiest to learn, because with all the others you can sort of just shove the sounds together and get the right sound, but ooh, oh, oh, that's not actually what most people assert this to be. Oh is different than just the plain ooh sound, like in the word soup, but that's what it is. So when you see Omicron upsilon, at first just think of the word soup, ooh. So yeah, this Omicron upsilon, ooh. So this last one is kind of like the sound you would make as you're going down a slide at the playground. Um, upsilon iota, wee, wee, wee. You know, you're having fun. Wee. Okay, if you look at these first couple, you might say, well, we've already done this, but look at that final thing at the top. That iota is written beneath the alpha. Not all texts will write these improper diphthongs with a subscript. Some of them include them identical to a proper diphthong, but, well, here's kind of the difference. In Attic, these iota subscripts aren't pronounced. Now, go back a few hundred years to the time of Homer. Yeah, they might have been pronounced, and so you would kind of insert a very soft I sound after this vowel. But by the time of Plato, you might not have pronounced these at all. So with this improper diphthong, the alpha with an iota subscript, it might just sound like a long alpha sound. Ah, as in father. And here is the second vowel, which can take an iota subscript. Notice that with the all caps writing, or when you have the eta as the first letter of a word, which is capitalized at the beginning, you don't have an iota subscript for these capital letters, but for the lowercase, yeah, you do write the iota subscript as an actual subscript. So just be sensitive to that. And the third and final vowel, which can take an iota subscript, is the omega. I mean, just like the alpha with a subscript, it still just sounds like a long alpha. The eta with a subscript still just sounds like A. And this omega with subscript sounds kind of just like omega without subscript. A long O sound. O. By now, you have probably gathered that some vowels are always short, and some are always long, and some can be either. And I'm just going to tell you right here specifically, epsilon is always short, and its long version is eta, which is always long. Omicron is the short version of omega, and omega is the long version of omicron. Those are separate. But in the middle, alpha can be either long or short. It's not both at the same time, it's one or the other, but the letter itself can be either one or the other. Same with iota and upsilon. So we have the always shorts on the left, brachia, and the always longs on the right, makra. More about vowel length. As you might have gathered, long vowels last longer than short vowels. They are pronounced longer, and we refer to this as the vowel's quantity. And again, some people say that different sounds get produced, the sound is different as it's pronounced longer. And so this change is referred to as a qualitative change. Diphthongs, being two sounds put together, kind of makes sense they're long. And I say pretty much because, well, they are long, but as far as accents are concerned, there are some exceptions we'll get into with the next chapter. When an editor wants to identify clearly that an alpha or an iota or an upsilon is short or long, there are these special marks that can tell you that. So this half circle above this alpha, it's called a breve. It's from the Latin word for short. But this straight line above the alpha, it's called a macron. It's from the Greek word for long. So on the left you have a short alpha, and on the right you have a long alpha. Lastly, there's a bunch of other stuff about capitalization and yada yada that Chasen Phillips gets into with the first chapter, but I don't want to because I think that you'll get it pretty quickly as we move along. This is a table that I personally think is pretty interesting, and I mean, maybe you'll find it interesting. You can write it on a bar napkin when you're hanging out with people or strangers at a bar, tell them about the Greek alphabet. But there are 3 different kinds of stops or mutes in the Greek language. There are dentals, which are consonants pronounced with your teeth. There are labials, which are ones pronounced with your lips. And there are palatals, pronounced further back with your palate. And we have unvoiced and voiced forms. Unvoiced means you are not engaging your voice box while you make the sound. So let's look at the top left, the tau. Well, the T sound, you can make the T sound, you can say top without engaging your voice box. But if you say dog, for both that D and that G in the word dog, for both of those consonants, you have to actually do something with your voice box. So if you make the same shape with tau and delta, but you engage your voice box with the latter, well, I mean, that's the difference. Same with pi and beta. It's the same shape with your lips, but you're using your voice box for the beta. And same thing with kappa and gamma. Make the shape of your mouth and whatnot that you would with kappa, but engage your voice box. Actually have some vibrations in your throat, then you do the gamma, as opposed to just the kappa. Taking it kind of a step further, being very breathy with the consonants. Make the tau or the delta sound, but have a puff of air after it, tau or telta. That gives you the th sound, which eventually just became the voiceless dental fricative. With the labial, at first it was just pi plus the h sound, p. And same with the palatals. Ki is a consonant produced at the palate, which has this aspiration. And in the last row, we have these sibilants. Sibilant is just the fancy word for S. So T or D plus S is first column, zeta, DS or TS, zeta. P or B plus S, psi, second column, is psi. And the KS sound, or the X in a lot of English words, that is the palatal sibilant. So we've talked about the vast majority of consonants, and we've talked about the vowels. Let's just go over the other consonants. We have the nasals, which are these M and N sounds, mu and nu, which I think the name makes a lot of sense. You have to use your nose to make these sounds. Also are the liquids, which are kind of semi-vowels, the and the I say semi-vowels because they're considered in some contexts vowels, like in Sanskrit, but they're liquid, they're smooth, whatever. And here's your sibilant, the sigma, the S sound, and because this sibilant is a consonant by itself, most of the time when people are talking about xi or psi, or xi and psi, and also zeta, they refer to those letters as double consonants because they're kind of like the voiced or unvoiced mute plus this sigma. So kind of two consonants combined. Now to all you Greeks and Byzantines, let's talk about why you think my pronunciation is so wrong. Bioticism. Now, what I have been mentioning a couple of times throughout this video is that there are different pronunciations of Greek. And if you walk into a church, well, if they're using Greek, it'll be very different from what I have been telling you. About ioticism. It basically means making like iota. Eta, upsilon, these diphthongs, epsilon iota, omicron iota, upsilon iota, they all sound like E, like iota. Also, the alpha iota sounds like eh and not I. Additionally, ow starts to sound like av or off. And if you know Hebrew or Latin, this might make sense. Originally, the vav in Hebrew was a vowel. It was kind of like a vowel. And in classical Latin, the V was actually just a consonant U. And later it became a V sound. So ow becoming off follows that trend. Same with epsilon upsilon, became F or ev. As for consonants, beta is vita, the B becomes a V sound. The gamma is something which doesn't exist in English for Byzantine Greek or modern Greek. It's a voiced velar fricative, and I don't really know how to do it very well. I don't speak modern Greek. The way I imagine it is trying to make a Y sound at the back of your throat. Ra. I would encourage you, if you're really curious, to go onto Wikipedia, look up voiced velar fricative, and see the sample there. The delta becomes a voiced dental fricative. If you remember theta, we're saying that's a voiceless dental fricative, like thin, but engage your voice box with this sound. Make a TH sound, but using your voice box, like in the word that. Well, the word that is different than the word thin. I don't use my voice box. Put your hands to your throat and feel your voice box. When you say thin with the TH there, you're not actually using your voice box, but with that, you definitely are. So delta becomes delta. Also, key, they leave off the palatal, and it just is the aspiration, it's just an H sound. Yeah. Here's an example of what I mean. If you're Orthodox, or you're a Byzantine Catholic, or you're even a Roman Catholic, the Greek for Lord have mercy, Kyrie eleison. Well, if you use what I was saying for classical pronunciation, it'd be something like Kyrie eleison. But Kyrie sounds very different than Kyrie. So that's the reason in church you hear Kyrie eleison. So your homework is pretty simple. Learn everything I just told you. If you're only interested in classical Greek, you don't have to learn that fun stuff about the Byzantine stuff, but yeah. Thank you for watching this video on our first real chapter on introductory Greek. Be sure to like and subscribe to the Shrub of Knowledge, enable notifications, leave a comment, share the video, tell your friends. Yeah, thanks.